right. Thank you all for coming. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Always on time. Thank you for your promptness. And as always at SETC, we acknowledge the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So without further ado, we want to welcome our wonderful guest, Melisa. She is here and we thank her so much for your leadership and all your hard work. And if you can, please do us the honors by introducing yourself and tell us about your remarkable work.
Amazing. Thank you, Maat. Thank you to the leadership at SETC, Victor, and the entire team for putting together a phenomenal series of events over the next, I think, 30 days. It's no easy feat. So my hat off to you. And welcome everyone. My name is Melisa Ellis. I am the founder and CEO at Nobellum. I come from a tech background, software engineering, and pivoted into the social impact investing space when I saw a massive gap in the tech industry, which was lots of capital, but where are the Black people? Not here. And so we set out on a bold mandate to launch 100 Black-owned businesses in STEM by 2025. And I'm happy to say that to date, we've now supported over 18,000 founders, provided direct funding to 121 businesses, launched an endowment fund with the University of Toronto that allowed us to distribute an additional 200,000 capital in non-dilutive funding. These companies went on to generate over 250 jobs, generate over 20 million in revenue. And these were very early stage pre-revenue companies. And so what that proved is that we were able to do a lot more than what we were currently doing in the marketplace. And this allowed us to now kind of set our sights on what's coming up next for Nobellum. So now that we've supported in launching a lot of companies, we're looking at how do we scale 10 companies beyond a million in revenue by 2030. So I'll pause there. I could say a lot more. Our company is co-founded by two phenomenal leaders, Catherine Lawrence and Malcolm Wright. And it's not just I alone that carries this mantle, but yeah, I'll pause there for now and hand it over to you, Matt.
That is beautiful. Congratulations on that. You are really sending an impact into our community. So we thank you so much. So now your 2025 mandate is to launch 100 Black-owned STEM businesses. So beyond that number, what is the critical piece of supporting infrastructure like a founder network, shared supply chain, or investor pipeline? Um, you are building to ensure these businesses don't launch, but thrive and scale for generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's been a couple of intentional infrastructures that were set up. Right on the outset, we recognized that, we're passionate, but we needed infrastructure. So we partnered with the University of Toronto, which allowed us to establish the work that we're doing. And now that even the endowment fund is over, we're still doing work with that ecosystem that provides unlimited access, market reach, exposure, advisory support. On another level, something else came out of the process of trying to support these entrepreneurs, and it was the Black Innovation Zone. That has been one of the, I think, most pivotal changes. And for those of you on the call who don't know what that is, Black Innovation Zone really emerged out of a need to access spaces that have tons of capital, tons of resources, but our communities aren't in. So I'm talking about Collision, Web Summit, Startup Fest, Elevate Festival. Have you seen the ticket prices? Those are at least $1,200 to $1,500. And if a Black founder has to choose between paying that versus payroll, well, most of us are going to choose payroll, or there's another business expense. And so we were seeing tons of capital being deployed, access, but behind gates. So a couple of us started pulling money together, 20K, 20K, 20K. We started being able to negotiate with larger conferences. Until now, we've raised more than $500,000 from the community. This has allowed us to distribute over 1,000 conference tickets. From this, we're talking about conferences that never had Black founders pitching. And for the last 2 years in a row, Black founders took home the top prize at Elevate. I'm talking 100,000, 200,000. Startup Fest, top prizes. And these are spaces we were never in before. They met investors. They closed their rounds, just had a founder close her round, 1.5, because of the access to these spaces. And so what you're seeing is it's not that these resources don't exist, that they're behind doors that to rooms that we don't even know exist. So us trying to achieve this mandate brought us stumbling into a whole other world. Now, Nobellum, alongside the Black Founders Network and the Federation of Black Canadian, we were the founding leaders who started putting our resources together. Now there are 27 of us. The Black Opportunity Fund, BBVA, Tribe Network, these are some of the partners who came on board and also said, hey, we're going to put our 20K in. And what that allowed us to do is now we have a massive founder pipeline, over 18,000 founders. We have a huge investor portfolio now of funders who participate in this because they're seeing a consistent flow of pipeline, and then the founders are also getting great benefit. I apologize. Give me a moment. There's a phone that's.
This is amazing, guys. I hope you guys are putting nice hearts in the chat. This is so impactful. Like, wow, I'm blown away.
Sorry about that.
Yes, go ahead. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, now, Nobellum is described as both a social enterprise and a technology enterprise. Which aspect is the true backbone of your legacy? The social infrastructure of trust and community you built, or the technological infrastructure and tools you provide to founders? Which one unlocks the other?
I'm gonna be honest, it really depends on where the founders are entering into the accelerator. So there are founders who are at the earlier stage and technology is really what they need. And then you also have some growth stage founders who need access to commercializing. Um, and so one of the things that we've started doing a lot more of is building out commercialization pathways for founders. And a project that, we're actually really excited about is we're looking at partnering with national STEM facilities across Canada so that Black founders can actually commercialize their technologies and produce the products that they need. On average, more than 60% of Canadian innovation hubs are empty. That was ringing. Are empty. And because these innovation hubs are empty, Canada is lagging behind on commercialization. So what we've identified is, okay, there's a lot of problems that could be solved in the ecosystem, but we have recognized two pathways on where we think we could have the most impact. And one of them is on supporting earlier stage companies to get MVP ready with more, pilot projects and exposure to ecosystems and stuff. But then we have our growth stage companies who need access to commercialization pathways. They need facilities. And we're now looking at working on building out a pool of funding that founders could apply into. So let's say you want to commercialize a product that you have. I'll give a real life example. We have a founder, Cynthia Ene. She is commercializing biopolio, which is an eco-friendly replacement to plastic. This is made from canola, which is one of Canada's top crops. I think 10 tons of that product can generate around 20 million in revenue. But to access these commercialization facilities, is almost impossible. So we were able to connect her with the facility. Now we're working on long-term partnership to provide subsidized access to facility space. So we've kind of moved beyond just the tech. And now we're looking at how do you commercialize, how do you sustain, how do you manufacture what you need to grow long-term. So those are two of the streams that we're working on. I would say the social infrastructure piece is overarching, regardless of the stream and where they are at in their life cycle. And then the type of technologies that they need access to at the idea stage are also very different than what they would need at the growth stage.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So now you co-launched an endowment to fund this work. So in building a legacy, how do you design that financial infrastructure to be self-sustaining and independent, ensuring the mission continues to fund Black innovation long after initial 100 business goal that is met?
I'll be honest, Matt, when we started, we had no idea what we were doing. I'm a software engineer, and my co-founder is licensed interior designer, and my other co-founder was an education consultant. What we actually have done, quite frankly, is we've always led with what problem are we solving, and how do we solve this in a way that puts our community in a position to succeed in the future. And so when we started the endowment fund, a lot of people thought we were funded by the University of Toronto. It was actually the other way around. We are a funder of the university, and we did that because we wanted to establish pipeline access and resources for the founders in our program. So we donated into a fund for 100,000, and then the University of Toronto matched that dollar to dollar. And then we were able to provide non-dilutive funding up to 200 directly. And with the community as a whole, that we were able to get other partners to match that. So we did about $560,000. That actually made us realize we, starting off with being very green in the industry, to by the time we launched the 100 mandate, we knew a couple of things. We were like, without really trying, right? With very little advisory support, very little funding infrastructure, because we started self-funded. Um, we were able to do this in 3 years, more than 500,000. Imagine if we were a bit more intentional and raised a venture capital fund or raised a fund that would allow us to have equity long term. I think that's kind of where we're sitting now. We're trying to figure out what is the best way. If we were to do this again, where do we create the most impact? How do we create the most impact, and who do we create that with? So I welcome anyone on the call who's got ideas, strategies, suggestions as we do build out our next phase of social capital financing for the entrepreneurs that we serve. I'm a strong believer in that we may have the ingredients, but it takes a community to build something that's long term. And I'm always willing to learn from those who are solving the same problems that we're solving. And it's how do we get Black people to no longer be operating at the lowest level of a real life monopoly game? How do we play this monopoly game right and do it together? And that's what we're solving next by seeing how we can get 10 companies beyond 1 million in revenue and then 5 million in revenue. And that's how we're going to create the smaller companies that are serving those larger companies and eventually, hopefully, our very own unicorn.
Oh, it will happen. It will happen for sure. Now, your work creates businesses, revenue, and jobs. So, looking at the bigger picture, what is the single most important systemic infrastructure in Canada's innovation economy, like procurement policies, venture capital, fund structures, university tech transfer offices, that still needs to be dismantled or rebuilt to make your work unnecessary in the future?
That's a great question. There's so many barriers. Um, and there's so many different levels I could approach this at. I'll talk about one that is gnawing at me a little bit more recently. We have we have founders who are not quite idea stage, but they're not quite growth stage. They're kind of sitting right in the missing middle, we've started calling them, of companies where if they don't get support within the next year or two, they will fail. And these are brilliant innovation in Canada's ecosystem. I've got one founder who is building an EV robot charger. And just imagine a little robot that moves from Tesla to Tesla or any car that's EV charged and charges it overnight. If anybody here lives in an apartment building, they know how hard that is to find a spot to charge your vehicle, then consistently find that spot to charge your vehicle. And so this product solves that problem. And the future of Canada is going to be more EV vehicles, but our infrastructure does not match that. So this founder, City of Toronto, got them connected. We did a partnered pitch. They won. It was great. Everything was going great. Proposals put in. when the city of Toronto realized that just one robot cost 15,000, then the whole project had to be reviewed because their procurement policy was limited to only 10,000. But $10,000 30 years ago is not $10,000 today. What pilot can you really run for 10,000? So then now we've had to start all over again and battling antiquated policies that are not serving Canada. See, Canada says it's ready for innovation, but its policies aren't. And so this founder is now taking on projects in Dubai where they are welcoming and accepting of EV solutions, robotic solution, autonomous driving solutions, whereas Canada's losing Canadian born, Canadian bred innovation. And so we're now working to see. I mean, we got a pilot in with the city of Markham, and GM came in and matched some funding with Oven, but there's still a lot of support that needs to be nestled around this because if condo buildings, parking lot infrastructures in malls, if they all use the same policy, I mean, use the same products, then we would democratize access to EV charging. I went on a road trip to Ottawa in an EV vehicle and we almost got stranded because four gas stations along the QEW EV chargers did not work. They did not work. We almost got stranded. And and so this is a very real reality. And it's almost like an oxymoron where we're trying to push certain types of innovation, then our policies are preventing us from piloting and scaling that innovation. So I have been urging the city of Toronto, the city of Brampton, and the city of Mississauga to revisit those policies on procurement so that we can actually test, validate, and scale Canadian innovation.
Wow, that's so important because even, with new things coming as far as the cars and the EV, so that you're right on point with that. So policies have to change. Thank you for that. So the term ecosystem implies interconnected support. So what is one piece of connective infrastructure, a mentorship protocol, a deal sharing platform, a peer advisory council that you've had to create from scratch because it simply didn't exist from Black STEM entrepreneurs before?
Well, just a couple of things. Um, so we, mm, so there's a project that's not out yet, but we're starting to plan a STEM collaborative to solve some of those issues. But I think what I've really had to create from scratch over the last years, outside of Nobellum, the accelerator, has been the Black Innovation Zone. Why I'm using this as for this answer, and this is no knock to the Canadian government because I truly am grateful for the support that we have been given, with the BEP. But the BEP project was supposed to bring the ecosystem together. And how do we as a community grow if we're all moving in separate directions? And so, out of a need to better connect founders, to better support founders, like what we've actually figured out is a almost like an ecosystem flow between partners that are part of the biz. Your early stage, you go to FBC. You want an idea stream, you go to Nobella. You want an investment bootcamp, you go to BEA. Then you can come back down for the growth stream, or you can go to BFN for their scale program, then come back to Nobellum's growth stream. Like we've actually have been building out a process flow because when a Black founder enters the ecosystem, they're twirling in a circle. They have no idea where to go, where to start. And every organization on face value looks like they're doing the same thing. It's us on the inside who know, okay, that person's not on that program. That person focuses more here. But that's information that I feel like has caused a lot of our founders to be wasting time twirling in a circle and not leveraging the ecosystem the way they should. And so with the Black Innovation Zone, we've started curating a ecosystem map for the founders who are in our programming, and in our membership. And we're hoping that if supported by the BEP, that we could actually further grow this and create like a map that can really connect the entrepreneurs, but then not necessarily like a back map, but something that's more tangible in person at our conferences, at our activations to amplify the partners alongside partners that are already funded to do some of that work. So that's a table that we're building, and we've opened it up to every Black-led org in the community to participate in because we do want to amplify and we do want to promote the work that they're doing. But we do need more ecosystem collaboration. And we need to not depend on anyone to make us collaborate. We have to do this ourselves. The onus is on us to collaborate. What the government can do, they can provide capital, allies, they can provide support and processes. I've learned so much from observing how the Chinese and the Indians and the Jews operate as a community. We can learn from that. But the onus is really on us to build that table and to collaborate and to ensure that the work that we're doing doesn't end with this entrepreneurship bubble, right? That it continues and it becomes a long-lasting part of our communities.
That's right. It's not just about being invited to a table, but it's building our own table. Thank you.
Yeah.
So your legacy is about changing the face of STEM entrepreneurship. So is the ultimate goal to build a powerful parallel ecosystem that operates alongside the mainstream, or to successfully integrate Black innovators into existing infrastructure that the distinction eventually fades? So which path creates a more durable legacy?
So I believe that our community has to have a code and a code that we follow by regardless of where we're at. And I think that's what the first part of your question could kind of allow us to build a code of respect, conflict resolution. How do we deal with uncomfortable situations? And I think if we as a community can learn how to, I don't know, build some type of an ethics code that we all follow, that would allow us to navigate the second part, which is the money that we need is not in our community. The money that we need is out there. So we need to get into those ecosystems. Um, so I strongly believe that that line over time should become fine enough where, if you can qualify for my program, you can qualify for Mars. We have so many founders who've left our program. They've gone to Next AI, Scale AI, Mars, OCI. And that's what we want. We want to be a launch pad because I think what we can do, it's almost like nesting, right? Like we can support them in that early incubation stage as they're growing and as they're scaling. But once we get them past, because now I'll be honest, there are founders in my program that are making $500,000 a year and they can't get into certain spaces. But once they get past a certain point, then the doors open up. But some of them don't survive long enough for that. And so I think that's where we kind of come in as like a bridge. All these Black focused programming, we should be a bridge to the wider market. But I definitely want to be an advocate for championing us to have space in spaces where we are not typically in. But when we're in those spaces, we have to stick to some type of an ethical code on how we speak of ourselves, how we speak of our brothers and sisters, how we deal with conflict resolution. And so because our reputation, it's interesting because one person gets mad at the next person, goes to the media, and before you know it, it looks like we're fighting amongst each other and that we're not organized. And it's just one or two people, right? But it represents all of us. And I think with that level of understanding, it's interesting you ask this question because we have noticed that founders who participate in the accelerator ecosystem, in the Black accelerator ecosystem, they leave with a sense of social accountability for their peers. They leave with the sense of, I need to make my peers proud. I need to make the ecosystem proud. They hold their tongue when they get into rooms where there may be things, and they handle certain conflict resolution with such an admiration and respect I've developed for some of these founders, and I've recognized the ones who are really bought into this space. There is almost like a social accountability that's developed. And if there's only one value for people who, there are people who are going to say, they don't need the Black innovation ecosystem. That's fine. But if there's one thing I would want them to take away from, it's having a social accountability to this community, because that will make them in turn, I think, be better leaders in the outside world.
Such a powerful point there, you know. Being our brother's keeper in these things too, our brothers and our sisters keeper when they're going out there and making changes for the collective, you know, for our community and for the betterment of our community and our generations, right? So this is awesome. So Melissa, this has been really explosive, very eye-opening and inspirational. So if you can just please leave your closing thoughts and calls to actions as we close.
My closing thoughts and call to action. I guess, I guess the things that I would wrap up in saying is a lot of the work that I've been able to do is because I had co-founders at a very early stage. My call to action to everyone on this call who's building, especially if you're a founder or a fund manager, is to build with a co-founder. We oftentimes tackle mountains by ourselves. And I am telling you, I would not have made it this far without my co-founders. When I'm strong, when I'm weak, they're strong. And when they're strong, I'm weak. And we balance each other. It's like riding a bicycle. In the US, they said 94% of Black-led orgs do not have another employee or senior leader working with them. It's just themselves and admins. And so you lose the ability to risk manage together, plan together, support one another, and problem solve together. The most loneliest part of being an entrepreneur is staying up at midnight solving most critical problems by yourself. And I have to say, I've never had to do that because I've always had co-founders. And that is what allowed us to do in 3 years, but it takes some orgs 10 years to do. It's the compound effects, the multiplier effect. And it also humbles you and it reminds you about vulnerable leadership. And that type of experience, it's the best preparation for life I've ever had. I'm grateful for it. And I do encourage any leaders on the call to really think hard if you are building alone, or if you're seeking a co-founder. It's definitely, and if you don't know how, they didn't know they were going to be co-founders. So you're not alone in this if you're struggling to find a co-founder. I invited them to my advisory committee. And because they kept showing up, eventually one day I'm like, you know what? You would be a great co-founder. And that was the story of how my co-founders became co-founders. And so I definitely encourage, and I think it's very needed in our community, especially for legacy planning as well, right?
Right, right, right. Well, Melissa, thank you so much. You are an inspiration, and we give you much more, you know, so much energy and more love to you, so you can carry on this mission not only for ourselves but for the next generations to come. So, thank you on behalf of SETSI for your leadership, and
Okay.
you're welcome. So we will close the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So as I say to everyone, it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later as we continue this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. See you
All
later.
right. See you. See you guys on the next one.